While there is a shared title, locations, and several characters, the film adaptation of You Only Live Twice is fundamentally a different story. So, how is the 1964 novel? After the murder of Tracy, James Bond has slipped into a deep depression. All of this is done really well. The film series, for obvious reasons, did everything it could to disassociate itself with On Her Majesty's Secret Service in the novel series is quite different. The impact of the previous novel's events is hugely felt, particularly in these opening chapters. M is initially keen to sack Bond due to a recent run of cock-ups, but is soon persuaded not to, and to instead send Bond on a different sort of mission. M's scene with Bond is very nicely done, with Bond assuming that M wants him gone. The dynamic between the two characters has always been well achieved, and in this scene that is no exception. Bond soon finds himself in Japan, where he eventually meets Tiger, aka Tanaka. Henderson is another ally of Bond's in Japan, but isn't actually in the story all that much. Tanaka was a truly fantastic character. The conversations Bond had with Tanaka were great. It's during this section of the novel that Japan and Britain's place in the post-war world are made clearer to the reader. Many differences and similarities between Japan and Britain are brought up, and Tanaka and Bond clash on several occasions. Fleming's analysis of the post-war world and where Bond's fits into it is made more apparent in this novel than in any of the previous entries. Japan was a member of the Axis powers, while Britain was a member of the Allied powers, so this very much influences many of Tanaka and Bond's interactions. Japan was also a country that not many people in the West knew a ton about at this time, so this novel is arguably quite interesting considering the time in which it was published. You Only Live Twice was published in 1964, in the same year as the then upcoming Japan Summer Olympics, which are referenced. So Japanese culture and Japan's place in the world is very much referenced and crucial to this fascinating part of the novel. Tanaka and Bond's discussions here make for the most engaging and interesting part of the novel. Tanaka then helps to integrate Bond into Japanese society, much like in the film adaptation. This really does drag the story down badly, although the cultural observations are nicely woven into the story. Bond's overall mission at this point is practically abandoned, and the lack of momentum or anything vaguely interesting becomes a bit of an issue. Now, while Bond is trying to become Japanese is tiresome to read, the story does pick up when Bond learns from Tanaka about a Dr. Shatterhand. This Shatterhand sounds interesting and also interests Bond, though Bond cannot seem to put two and two together after Tanaka mentions that Shatterhand recently came from Switzerland. But after a tad too long of Bond's integration into Japanese society, we finally have an interesting addition to the narrative. Bond soon learns that Shatterhand and his wife are Blofeld and Irma Bunt, but he keeps this information to himself. This only serves to propel the story further. Bond now has a proper target. His actual mission is to kill Blofeld and Irma Bunt. Bond then sets his sights on reaching Shatterhand's castle with assistance from Tanaka. Bond soon meets Kissy Suzuki, this novel's Bond girl. Kissy is a dull and ultimately uninteresting character, so it's a relief that she's introduced fairly late into the story. Once again, the story grinds to a halt. Bond spends time fishing, and really this story is just very inconsistent. One minute it's great and brilliant to read with wonderful additions to the story, the next minute it just drags so much. The sense of urgency and momentum is there one minute and completely gone the next. It made for a slightly frustrating reading experience, though some of these deviations from the main plot are understandable. Bond soon reaches Blofeld's lair, and once again the story picks up greatly. The Bond novel since Thunderball had been building up to such an encounter. Bond now has a personal revenge mission, and this makes You Only Live Twice so readable at this stage. Blofeld is brilliantly written. He's a proper villain here, and much improved on his last appearance, which was still great. But I'm not too bothered about Blofeld's grand plan, because it's all about that eventual clash between Bond and Blofeld. Bond initially enters Blofeld's lair under the guise of a Japanese miner. This soon fails, and Blofeld and Irma Bunt discover Bond's true identity. From this point, Bond is arguably in a tougher and more dangerous situation than he's ever found himself in. Bond and Blofeld have a proper fight, and Blofeld is soon killed by Bond. This was fantastic. We never really got anything like this in the films. Bond's adversary has been vanquished in a truly marvellous way. Bond soon loses his memory, the world now believes him to be dead. Kissy Suzuki becomes, in my opinion, very unlikable. Instead of helping Bond's memory return, Kissy lies to him, and as Bond knows nothing better, continues to live in Japan. Kissy was arguably already a very bad Bond girl, but this might just tip things further. Kissy may be a bigger villain than Blofeld. Bond gets into a relationship with Kissy, and soon she falls pregnant. Thankfully for Bond, he buggers off to Russia in hopes of retaining his lost memories. So that was You Only Live Twice. You Only Live Twice might be the most inconsistent Bond novel so far. It's got great stuff, some rubbish stuff, and some amazing stuff. It's got sort of every variation of quality in there. Bond's a great protagonist in this, his character arc is brilliant, especially in relation to Blofeld. Tanaka is also a great character, so many great lines come from him, and his conversations with Bond were entertaining to read. Some of the pacing is irritating, and there are several instances where there just isn't an awful lot happening, and what isn't very interesting. Kissy Suzuki is a dreadful Bond girl. She's firstly dull and inoffensive, and then she's a lying manipulator. So Kissy doesn't come across very well in this story. Blofeld's great, but that just goes without saying. What a great character. It's that simple. The next Bond novel I'll be taking a look at will be The Man with the Golden Gun, and I'll see you then. Bye.